Hi Sakshi, how are you today?
I'm amazing. I'm so happy to be.
We're so happy to have you here. You are called Sakshi, our organization is called Sakshi, so that was something which amused me quite a bit when I got the live. So I know that you were supposed to do it with Smita, do the live with Smita today, but she had a last minute medical emergency and I had to step in. But I'm so glad to have this opportunity and interact with you because whatever I've heard about you is amazing and I'm really excited.
Thank you.
So why are you so happy today? Share that with us and our viewers. All of us need that positivity in our life.
This is just a pretend face. No, but in
Literally,
general, I
literally.
think, no, but in general, I think it's just talking about or just, interacting and connecting with people to talk about sexuality is something that I'm extremely passionate about, and that instantly puts a smile to my face. Even if I'm having the most dreadful day and somebody's like, let's get on a talk, I'm like, yes, let's do it. So I think it's just the passion that's reflecting through all of that.
So that really brings me to ask you, from where does this passion stem in? What were your experiences which led you to begin talking about sexuality and everything that you do?
I usually, this is like my more so I have like two stories for that. The first one is I usually tell people, I always wanted to be an OBGYN. I wanted that. I love genitals. I love talking about reproductive health or just learning about it. And I had a very supportive mom who was like, let's talk about this, let's learn about this. And maybe not particularly sex, but in general, understanding that, there's something called as reproductive health, and this is something that you should be learning, right? And then comes again an aspect of my personality, which now that I've grown up in, and in retrospect, I understand that I still am a chronically ill person. And now that I've adding the tag of queer in my identity, over the years, I've realized that there was so much about my mental health and my sexuality that was constantly ignored by healthcare professionals. And I think that and that just somewhere just combined together, I think that is what makes me so passionate about whatever I'm doing today, and probably why I want to help everyone. Like I do not have an age group, or I do not have like a particular gender population. I just say anybody who's above the age of 3 years, I'm there. I'm there for you.
So, happy Pride. I hope that we are able to actually go out and celebrate Pride once the pandemic opens up. But for all our viewers who don't know Sakshi or aren't familiar with her work, I'd just like to take 2 minutes and introduce Sakshi, if that's okay. I
Yeah,
mean, our guest for
absolutely.
today. So, Dr. Sakshi Tikku, her pronouns are she and her. She is the founder of Sex, Love, and Occupational Therapy. And she is a queer occupational therapist and a counselor who's working in the areas of sexuality, intimacy, relationships, and mental health across different lifespans. So, she has worked in the school based, home health, outpatient settings, and she currently caters to clients globally through telehealth care. So that is very amazing because a lot of people have restricted themselves to the lockdown, and I personally could not find many people who were willing to consult people online and reach out to people across the globe. So thank you so much for doing that on behalf of the entire community, because even at Sakshi we try to spread and help people as much as we can. We don't let age barriers or geographical barriers come in between, so it's always a pleasure to connect with people who match our ideology. So thank you so much for joining us today. And just a little more about Sakshi. She believes in advocating education for everyone with or without disabilities, straight or queer, to experience filling, satisfactory, consensual, and exciting relationships, irrespective of their physical and/or mental condition, sexual orientation, and gender identity. So, again, thank you so much for joining, Sakshi. And we're just gonna ask you something that we ask everybody who joins our lives over here. Tell me 3 words you would use to describe yourself today.
3 words to describe myself. Um, ecstatic, curious, blushing.
Okay, that is a good answer. Would you like to tell us why you are so ecstatic? Is it just what you told me some time back?
Yeah, exactly. Because just a while back, I had connected. I just had another event a while back, and we again spoke about so many things, all sexuality and pleasure related, which again made my heart really happy. Uh, and then when I say curious, because I think every conversation brings out something in me intellectually. Um, that's so different because every time somebody is able to guide me in a way that I sound more relatable or I sound much more fun, even though I'm not sure, but I just sound fun, which is really great because then it makes me think that, oh, there's a possible aspect that I'm not thinking about yet, and may possibly, I left this out. I should address it this year. I should address that year. I think, like I said, just a while back, I got in a live and I forgot to address virtual, how to have more safer virtual datings and everything else. And I'm like, oh my God, should I create a post? Should I create this? Should I do that? How am I supposed to? So it's just like that for me. And blushing because, yeah, just that's just me.
So, you seem to be a lot of fun and you're wearing hoops. Anybody who wears hoops is always a lot of fun, so don't worry about that.
Thank you.
So, we'll just begin with our, because we have very little time and there is so much I want to talk to you about, so we'll begin. A lot of our viewers and myself included don't completely understand what occupational therapy is. So, if you could just give us a little bit of insight into that to begin with.
Thank you for that. Occupational therapy is an allied health profession. Basically, what we mean by allied is like an additional or a supportive healthcare professionals who can help with a lot of things. So, the core of what occupational therapy is that we believe that people can function or people have in a sense of engaging in occupations. Now these occupations can vary from self-care to much more dynamic things, like brushing our teeth, dressing, putting clothes on, putting makeup on, going on dates outside, having sex, just commuting in a bus or anything else. Basically everyday daily activities that a person engages in, right? Now, because of certain restrictions or limitations, not necessarily physical, um, now these can hamper a person's engagement in these activities. That is when an occupational therapist steps in because we help you get back to these occupations in the most adaptable, effective way that makes much more sense to you. So rather than it being more functional, like sorry, rather than it being more mechanical, like you have to exercise and you have to do this and you have to do that. I'm not saying that it's that, but rather than it being more mechanical, it becomes a lot more purposeful and meaningful and more goal oriented and tailored to the clients so that they can get back to what matters most to them. That's what occupational therapists do. We are basically helping people live better lives.
So, is this somebody who has been through something traumatic which would affect their daily activities and how they function, or anybody can go for occupational therapy and just become better at what they do every day?
I actually, even though it's ideally the definitions have been put in terms of injuries, but I personally like to say that every person with injury, without injury, everybody has problems, right? So we are one of those professionals who can give you solutions. It's like that. It's something that's much more effective, hands-on, something that you can get back to. That can range from if you have a backache because of using a bad chair, we are there, we can tell you how to adapt to it. It's That's how it is, and it's a beautiful field because it's not restrictive to a certain age. We work right from an infant to as long as the geriatric population goes. We are everywhere.
Okay, that is something I did not know. So thank you so much for sharing with us and all of our audience here, because I just really like coming here and talking to people and learning so much about so many new things. And that is something at Sakshi also we try to propagate new ideas among people, make it a part of their daily vocabulary. And that inspires me every day. I just absolutely love working here. So, talking about that, so occupational therapy we've already established is not very well known in our country, and people believe, I mean, from what you told me initially, even I came to the understanding that it would be secluded to maybe the older population, people whose physical capabilities are not as much. But you also spoke about how in your other interviews, podcasts, and even what you told me now, it's been gaining a lot of popularity among people. You practice it. So the younger generation as well has been getting into it. So what drew you in particular towards occupational therapy, and why do you think there is a change in how people are perceiving this particular occupation?
Which occupation? You mean sexuality in
Therapy,
general?
no, occupational therapy.
So I think, like I said, that there needs to be the idea is that we yet do not have a very concrete definition or an institution which can tell us, this is what it is and this is how you function, right? So because of that abstractness, there are few pros and cons. Pros that we can get to work, we can be a little experimental, we can expose ourselves to new areas, new emergent areas which are not already established. Even the one that I'm working in, it's considered a niche globally. And it's not just the case in occupational therapy for India. It's globally a niche. There are barely any occupational therapists, or I would say handful that are actually working in sexuality or, helping people have better sex lives. It's like that. So it's still a work in progress. But then again, the cons is that when you do not have a very concrete, you haven't established anything in a very concrete way, there are many misinterpretations to it, right? And I would rather say many interpretations to it, which do tend to get
Good, good.
misinterpreted in the wild. So I think it's getting better, but we aren't there yet. At least I would say the opportunities, the way that we are being educated, the way we are being exposed to our curriculums in general, it's not very much tailored to our population. It's very Western, extremely Western. And that sometimes becomes a little problematic given how the rich culture in India is, because we are not talking about just now, take the simple occupation of, say, dressing.
Right.
Now we talk about putting on socks using some aid or anything of that sort, which is not the thing here. We wear chappals on some days, we wear Crocs. That's not our thing. Not everybody wants to invest in socks because our majority population wants to know how to put on a normal chappal or how to drape a sari, right? And this is all something that's not covered. So I think that becomes a little hiccup in when we, approach and do all of these things. But I think it's getting there. It's not half as bad. We have we have come a long way where we can at least say, oh, there's occupational therapy. I think it will take a few more years where we know that yes, this is what occupational therapy is.
Right. I mean, some progress is always good. I mean, it's better than no progress at all. I would really like us to progress at a much faster pace, but that is just me. And we try again. I try, Sakshi tries, and I'm pretty sure you do too whenever you educate somebody about making the progress faster. But we'll get there. I'm sure we will. I always say that our generation is going to take the world by a storm. That is something I very strongly believe in because I really like how a lot of us think. But talking about that, we spoke about stigma. So, sex is something which is very, very stigmatized, especially talking about it in public when it comes to the Indian culture in particular. So, from that, I'm assuming that when you began your journey about talking about sexuality, talking about better helping people have better sex lives, you probably faced a lot of hurdles then. So, would you like to talk to our viewers about that?
Yeah, I I personally actually did not care about others because I wasn't one of I know that that is how my personality has been. It's been very rebellious. I'm like, you think like that? No, but I think like that. So that was never a problem for me to go ahead and speak in public. What really did matter to me that when I go out in public, that's my understanding that when I go out, it's also a minor representation or a mirror of this is my upbringing. These are my genes, and this is who I am. So someday it shouldn't be so that when I go out and speak something in public, I'm disappointing my parents or go against them in some way or other. So I think the biggest hurdle was telling my parents that this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. difficult and a very awkward conversation of months and months. But I think they can all see I'm doing great. But yeah, it took a while. I think the biggest problem was that I cared less for people who I did not know, but then it was I was more careful about the fact that what are my parents or my friends, what are their perceptions of me, because these are the people that really matter to me. Once that awkward phase was gone with them, I think the rest was just like a cakewalk. Not exactly, but I think navigating it became a lot more better because I knew that no matter what happens, I have a support system, which is a privilege in itself. But yeah, they just made everything a lot better.
So, how is it with your loved ones now? Are they on board completely, or is it still, do you still think that they're on your side but they don't understand what you do completely?
What I do, okay, so they are the primary advocates of, this is she's not a physiotherapist. They'll be the first people to be like, she's an occupational therapist. She does this, and she also talks about sexuality. So sab ratta mara hua hai, and they just go ahead and say that to everyone. So I think they have become equally good advocates. But I think yeah, they have some beliefs of their own because um, like a few months back, I think I just posted something about a vibrator on my feed. Like I got a package and I was asking my mom, see, this is the vibrator. She's like, you used it? I'm like, yeah, it was nice. So I think I never thought 2 years back I'd be having a conversation with my mom where I'll be telling her, I used a vibrator. But today we can joke about it, we can laugh about it. However, there are
Absolutely.
certain boundaries. I cannot go ahead and say, Ari, today I'm going out for sex. So
Yeah.
there are always some things that they'll be on board with, some things that their cultural upbringing and just their own values stop us from, conversing. But I think it's much, much more better. It's a very sex positive space.
That's really nice to hear, and I'm just glad that your work affects how your relationship with your parents as well. Because, trying to bring a change in the world when the people at home aren't are on board is very difficult, and it also leaves you feeling like a hypocrite. So this is having a sex positive space at home is very very essential, and I'm so glad you have that for you. So, talking about, you spoke about your relationship with your parents. A lot of people, this has been a prevailing conversation in India where parents do not want to engage in conversations about sex. But as soon as an individual is married or is even talking about marriage, they start making plans. Abhi 3 saal mein you need to have kids, or by this age you really need to give me a child. But they will not talk about everything else which needs to follow or precedes it. So, what do you do then? What are your thoughts about this, and what do you think must change?
I think the entire hypocrisy about it, right? The kid is not like, it's not a vardhan from Bhagwan that suddenly we'll be like, please give us child and the Bhagwan will drop it in our
महाभारत
hands.
स्टाइल पूरा.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, होगा उनके टाइम पे, but हमारे टाइम पे तो we need to work for it. And given how the current age is, we even understand that fertility is such a huge issue. Fertility is such a huge issue. People do not want kids at a very young age, or people understand that, planning and investing for a kid also requires a lot of time and energy. We have kids with disabilities, be it intellectual, physical. We have neurodivergent kids. There is a lot more going on in general when we are talking about, please have a kid. Even when conceiving, people usually these are the times when one actually understands that somebody has vaginismus, somebody has dyspareunia, it's just painful sex, a tight pelvic floor, somebody has erectile dysfunction. All your life or all the 20 years of your life, it would have been so much more better that these conversations or the person was allowed to explore themselves to understand that, once we grow older, we do understand that our hormone levels also change. So it's much more easier to train our body to get accepted in that role once we do not have those 100 social responsibilities, right? So I see that and I see those changes because when I deal with such clients, I see a 20-year-old with vaginismus, I can deal and treat that so much more better than somebody with 35-year-old who has vaginismus. Because now you are dealing with somebody who is married, who wants to give sex to their partner, who wants to have children but can't have children. They have gone through so many things altogether. So it's all there's so much going on, right? And on top of that, you are missing pleasure altogether, right? You always thought that you'll get married, you'll have sex, that will change everything, but nothing has changed. You're feeling more miserable, right? So I think the whole hypocrisy around it needs to change, and self-exploration in general should be made guilt-free.
Right.
I'm not saying that everyone should start having sex early on. That's completely their own choice. If you want to have sex, have it. You don't want to have it, don't have it. But having a sense of how your body is, what your body looks like, um, what your genitals feel like, or just you touching yourself, how does that feel like? I think that early understanding and awareness, it can be so helpful as they move on ahead. And the one solution for that is sex ed, and I'm so sad that our sex ed is horrible and it's negligible. But hopefully, I think kids are here. Kids, you can't stop them. They are learning things, they are doing things, and I hope they pick up the right things.
Yeah, so the thing is, even so, we work at Sakshi, we are very closely linked to the POXO Act. That is, it's the act which prevents the sexual abuse of children. So, in the POXO Act, according to the exact wordings, even talking about anything which has sexual connections or is sexual in nature with somebody who's below 18 counts as abuse. So over there,
Yeah.
in such a legal structure, bringing in proper sex education, which doesn't just talk about giving information, but actually informing and equipping a child, becomes very difficult. So that is something
Yeah.
that needs to be changing right at the systematic level, the basic systemic level. Because even if we begin conversations, schools begin conversations, it'll still be contrary to a law which governs them. So this is not just something you
I
and I need to change; it's right at the policy level.
Yeah, but I think this is something very interesting that you bring because when I know that legally I cannot move ahead this barrier, I have worked with, like I said, I worked in a school-based setup, and now I've seen children with disabilities and also who are neurodivergent who do show some sensory based needs or just acting out behaviors of stimming, touching, poking, which is easily confused with masturbation, right? And I think this becomes very important that we start counseling parents instead. So parenting, there is no age where you are like, don't talk about masturbation, right? And I think that helps so much because when these parents understand that they just use these developmental signs as cues to bring up these topics with their kids that, this is how it feels like, this is when you can do it, this is where you can do it. Um, even when we talk about good or bad touch and everything else, I think that becomes that becomes a lot more important because even when we are talking about, like you said, systemic wise, we have an approach of no means no, right? Or yes means yes, or you have to stay away from abuse. There, everything comes from such a negative perspective. I'm not saying it's not there. It's there. It happens every single day. We see the cases. It's horrible. It's gruesome. The trauma happens every single day. But the trauma can be reduced when people know how to pleasure themselves. People know how to control their own impulses. And I think that majority of education is being left out. We just think that if we say that, this is a red sign, you can't go here, we are forgetting that even though we are humans, we are actually evolved from animals. That is how our impulses are, and something will tick off, right? So, and I'm not saying this to protect anybody or anything else. I think, like, yeah, like that is the place where I'm coming from. But if you're gonna say that something is bad, you also have to show the good sides of it because that is how somebody is going to know that there are two aspects to it. You cannot just show one side of the coin and it's like this is एक रुपया and everything. दूसरा side भी तो है.
That
वो
is
भी तो
something.
दिखाना पड़ेगा.
That is one space I come from personally because our whole criminal system here works on punishing the perpetrator, but we don't look back and see where it's stemming. I mean, if 15-year-olds are engaging in sexual abuse of minors children, then it can't really be just their issue or just the parenting issue, the system, the education, everything has, even the basic hormonal changes where they did not have an outlet, all of that has an effect on it. And that is a conversation we need to be having, because everybody is so quick to go on and start hurling abuses and talking about that person and kaise maa baap honge, but it's not just them. So that is one space I do come from.
Exactly.
But I
Yeah.
understand the anger people have. That is something which is very understandable, because why wouldn't they be angry? And when people are angry, they don't really think straight. But that is something we as change makers and people who have a platform should be talking about.
Absolutely. But I think that strike of balance becomes very important because even though it prevents me, I think when we say that you cannot talk about this, you cannot talk about this, but I constantly have kids. When we say developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities, I do get parents who are like, this is very embarrassing. Do something about it. Am I going to see and am I going to wait there and look at the law which says that no, you cannot talk about it? Or am I going to focus on my Hippocratic oath which says that you cannot do any harm? Right? What am I doing in that ethical situation? I'm going to do something that's going to be the best for the child's interest, that's going to help the family, that's going to inform the family. I'm not saying I'm going to change the entire thing, but I think these conversations, parents are the biggest change makers. I think they feel equally awkward about this because they are clueless. They never got their sex ed, right? Nobody got their sex ed. So they are equally clueless. But I think that role of educating and coaching parents about this is how you can talk, this is how you can navigate the conversation, and just even having their consent that this is where we can be talking about all of these things is one of the very great ways to even have these conversations on an institutional level, or incorporating parent and the child while you conduct these workshops. At least I think becomes a very great way of saying that we are sort of bypassing it. We are bypassing the system, but not going against it.
That is something
Jugaad.
a lot of us do. It. Yeah, Jugaad. I'm a big fan of Jugaad, because there's so many things you don't agree with, and so many things you often don't have an option, a choice, and then you have to end up doing Jugaad. And I mean, yeah, that is an ethical dilemma. But as you said, wherever you can do, what's best for your whoever's consulting you, you should go with that. But talking about that, what do you think is the right age, the ideal age people should begin conversations about sex and sexuality with their children?
It's an ongoing conversation. Now, there's so much to cover in sex and sexuality. With 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, or at least 3 to 5-year-olds, and make sure they understand about their body, what to name their genitals, um, who can help them dress, how can they pee, where do they pee from, where do they poo from, things like that, right? So it's an ongoing thing. Even though we do not think dressing is an intimate occupation, it very much is. It very much is. Or toileting, it's a very, very intimate occupation. And we constantly go ahead and, bypass that boundary with kids, like, yeah, we'll come to the toilet for you, or we'll wash the genitals for you, or we'll do that. I think there's a certain age and limit where you need to give that autonomy to them, and when you're doing this, you are in sort of teaching them more about sexuality, that you have autonomy over your own body. Just asking them throughout as the age goes on, you can keep asking them questions, right? Help them take the decisions of their body. Is this the dress that you want to wear, or is this the dress that you want to wear? Just simple questions. I'm not saying they can take all the decisions by themselves, but there are some decisions which help them know that they have been given a choice and they are being considered an equal individual. And not just looked at by the child, looked at as a child, right? As we move ahead from 6 to 10 years, I think conversations about a circle of trust, understanding what makes you uncomfortable, understanding touch that makes you uncomfortable, areas somebody can touch, nobody can touch. What can you do if you feel uncomfortable or you encounter a situation that you feel is dangerous? I think all of these things just gives the child better understanding that now that when I go to my mom or my father or somebody else, they will believe me. or at least, hear them out, even if it's about somebody close. I think just giving them so much in the early years, giving them that autonomy becomes very important, because when they grow old at, like, say, 6, 10 or above, they know that they are not going to be ridiculed when you come to them giving any concerns, right? Even if it's very serious, if it's not serious, be it anything, at least they know that their voice will not be disregarded. And I think while they reach 10, 11, I think having conversations about menstruation, and I think this goes for all genders. I'm not only saying this for vulva owners, but this goes for all flipping genders. That they need to understand what's menstruation, how to take care of it, whom to go to. Just on demo, just have a placement of how can put a sanitary napkin or whatnot. I do this exercise with my kids, neurodivergent kids especially, where I have like these different brands of pads, because everyone has a different texture, and some of them can be very, very particular about how the sensation of the pads feel. So I think I let them touch it, to their thighs, to their legs, something that feels the most comfortable. I then ask the parent to, choose this pad company for using pads or anything. So I think all of these conversations there's so much to navigate when it comes to these things. I think that becomes very, very important. And as they move ahead, if I do see stimming or wet dreams in kids, it becomes very important that you start talking about self pleasure as well. I wouldn't always say masturbation out loud, but self touching, self pleasure. There are other words to say. This is what happens. This is what you can do, and this again goes for the entire entire gender spectrum. Just because I think that was the most difficult part when it came to my sex ed, that I knew how to work around the vulva, but I did not know what to do if somebody with a penis came to me. And I'm a healthcare professional. That should not, a gender should not be a barrier. A genital should not be a barrier for me, right? So having that understanding of what can happen, how can you support that person, um, I know my brother was taught about menstruation and everything, so he did not know what to do, but then he still asked, do you need pads? Do you need something? Do you need chocolate? Do you want a hot water bag? I think that kind of preparedness also helps. Just knowing that there are options even when you cannot voice it out, right? So this there is just so much to learn. I think the whole polarized view that sex education is about a penis going inside a vagina is very binary, very patriarchal, and also just ancient. It's ancient now.
I
This is
remember
not
my
how it is.
CBSE sex ed, and it was just, I mean, we spoke about the sexual organs, and then we spoke about contraceptives, and that's about it. So we spoke about
Yeah.
how a baby is formed, how not to make a baby form, and that's it, sex ed over. And then we studied a lot about plants, which is really does not matter to anybody who's not taking up biology in the future.
Exactly. See, so that's what there is a majority. We are having sex. Obviously, India is having such a huge population. ऐसे ही थोड़ी हो गया. People are doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously. So I think just having that understanding and that fine line between, this is how we need to be safer and this is how we can enjoy it. The point of enjoy does not come into picture.
At all.
We are still living in that ancient idea that, when we are having sex, it's to procreate. They wanted to procreate in the ancient Zamana because they were warriors, they were fighting. We are not fighting anymore. Nobody is going for, we are going to wars. That's not,
But
but
everybody is not going for war.
yeah, but there is still a chance of survival. We have found out the way to survive and just go ahead. But now we need to strike a balance between survival and maintenance. And there's no maintenance. There's just creation, death, creation, death. There is no maintenance happening to it. So I think this is something very important, because when the whole picture of sexuality comes in and sex ed comes in, it needs to be an ongoing conversation, because our I think what I spoke of last, like at least when I say that what I knew about sexuality last year to what I knew about sexuality last year, I keep growing each year. And it keeps on changing each year. Gender has become so expansive. It has become so expansive. There have been new genders, there have been new romantic orientations. There is so much more. And we can't stay up to date with everything, but we can try. We need to we need to at least know that there is something out there which we need to be talking about. I don't remember that my parents told me about consent. Even though I knew about good and bad touch, there was no mention of consent or how should my consent sound like in general. And that in itself is such an expansive thing. We can speak about acronyms today that it's FRIES, freely given, reversible, informed. It needs to be enthusiastic and specific. But not every consent is going to be enthusiastic. And not every consent is going to say no. Some is going to say maybe and it still means no. Is we are like, I'm not sure, but it's still no. And that's not up to you to manipulate and convince me कि चलो नहीं ऐसे करते हैं. So I
Manipulated
think there's
consent is not consent.
exactly, and those gray areas also need to be defined because we cannot prepare them for anything. Even though we give them this education, they are going to have their experiences of their own, right? We cannot prepare them for everything. But we can make sure that even if we give them the tools, their foundation is strong, at least they'll know how to move forward from here. Right? I think having that idea that this is my boundary, this is how my body works, this is absolutely what I want, this is absolutely I do not want. Once that is established, I think no matter how many number of partners come and go, everything will give me a good experience of what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, how am I supposed to react, how am I supposed to respond, how am I supposed to just deal with rejection in general, right? That in itself becomes such a huge thing. So it's just an ongoing process for both parents as well as kids, for everyone.
So at Sakshi, something that I learned very recently actually was when we talk to a lot of children, we deal with child sexual abuse. So, when we speak about good touch and bad touch, we do not believe in the concept of good touch and bad touch because any touch which makes any individual uncomfortable automatically becomes a bad touch. So even if it's good touch in the sense that somebody, your blood relative, is hugging you, that is technically good touch, but if it makes the child uncomfortable, then it's out of the picture. The child should be able to say, no, I don't want to hug him. And the parents should be okay with that. So that is something we try to advocate as much as possible. And that is something we believe in.
Absolutely.
But I really wanted
Absolutely.
to ask you, I mean, we spoke about stigma, we spoke about a lot of misconceptions people have, and you're a medical professional, so I'm sure you've come across things which were so misconceived that it was almost comical. So, is there something you would like to share with us?
Oh my God, there is just so many. I can't. Almost. Okay, so occupational therapists are not supposed to talk about sex because that suddenly makes us perverts. Yeah. So I was considered a pervert for the longest time. Then what with orgasms also. I think that was for the longest time that sex is going to pain and it's gonna continue paining. Or if you do not orgasm, you are broken. So all of that fun stuff, very cliche, very cliche. I think yeah, this keeps on going, and I think everybody keeps on believing that the whole the whole myth has been, even though the social media understands that we need to be taking these concerns seriously, tod marod ke it has been served in such a way that people believe that this is what it is, this is me, and I am broken. That's how it has been now. And then they're like, yeah, I am broken, listen to me, I am broken, listen to me. There is no forward solution that, this entire script itself is stupid, uthao, feko. That script itself does not happen. Um, I cannot believe how I did survive 4.5 years without understanding pronouns, understanding gender, or just the basic difference between sex and gender. So, and I'm a healthcare professional. I cannot imagine, I cannot imagine how the general population will navigate this entire conversation because they don't care about sex and gender on a daily basis. As long as it does not concern them, everybody is ignorant about it, right? So I think there is so much to unpack even for healthcare professionals. I did not see the structure of clitoris until 2017. It's not there in our medical textbooks.
Oh, oh, I did not know that. All right. So, I mean,
It's not.
I interact with quite a few of the last generation doctors because my parents also come from the medical field, and over there I don't see the sort of gender sensitivity you would expect. Because even as a medical professional, I don't think there are conversations about it. Let alone, I mean, right now, learning about gender, learning about sexuality, learning about pronouns, the whole gender not being binary anymore. It's a choice. I mean, if you choose to be woke, you get to learn it. And that is not how a society should be functioning. Because if it's a choice, then there are a whole group of people you're choosing to exclude, and exclusion shouldn't be a choice.
Yeah, I think I have both views to it now. Now that I see my friends and then I speak to them, sometimes it becomes too overwhelming for me as a professional in this field to keep up with the number of pronouns that keep coming, and the number of labels that keep coming up. And even though people have been having that freedom of choosing a label, people have also taken that freedom to create as many as possible. Now, I'm not saying that's bad, but it also comes from the fact that we have been oppressed for so long. We haven't had a voice or a picture of our own that now it's been represented in a lot of ways. A lot of ways. And suddenly people just start thinking that it's bogus. It's like the whole COVID thing, Some people think that it's fake, some people think it's real. It's the same thing with gender and sexuality as well. When you know that it's so widespread, it's global, it's happening, you see it, and you just fail to understand it somehow, and you are just like, ya to fake hai, or this is against it, this is a sin, this is a sin. So I think for them to find that balance and keep up with what's happening is also important, because I've met some people in the queer community who have been so generous that they are like, if you do not get the label, I don't expect you to get the label. Just fuck that. I am here for you to understand that, this is me, and let's talk about this, and just respect me for who I am. That's all. That's all I'm asking for. If these are my pronouns, just respect me for who I am. You cannot understand what's happening. That's okay. But then there is also a section of queer people who are like, no, accept us. You have to. You have to. You have to. And then that becomes a little problematic, because that's again a choice for the people, right? Because when we are speaking of choices, if I have the choice to be whoever I want to be, the other person also has a choice to um, just not understand and just be ignorant about it. But then the whole aspect of respect and just minding your own business becomes very important then. You just cannot be ignorant and say like, what is this happening? You cannot just go ahead and diss around things. If you've chosen to be ignorant, then also choose to be silent. That's something that becomes very, very important. And I think I make people understand this again and again. You don't accept it, then shut up and sit in a corner. Don't comment and don't spread stuff which you do not know about. Just shut up and sit in a corner. I think
That
that
happens
that
a
becomes
lot.
very.
But the thing is, the way people ask questions sometimes, it does begin to get a little intrusive, and it begins to, I mean, I have my pronouns in my bio on Instagram, and this friend haven't spoken to in a really long time just goes, "Why are your pronouns in your bio? I thought you were straight." I'm like, that does not pronouns in my sexuality. There is no relation between, and I proceeded to explain to them how pronouns work, but the way people formulate questions, I'm pretty sure it was innocent, and they didn't mean harm, but that's just how we
Yeah.
are functioning right now. So again, over there, I get why a lot of the community, because of the oppression, because of how intrusive people can be, there is a lot of anger over there, and it will take some time to get rid of it. But again, everybody has to tread very carefully, not hurt sentiments, and just try to create a safe space. And that is what Sakshi has been doing. We're trying to make each home a safe space for children right now, and as we expand, as we talk to more amazing people like you, we're expanding into. We already have been talking about sexuality, but right now the Rakshan project is talking about creating a safe space in every home. So I have overshot our time by quite a bit, and this is a very, very interesting conversation. So I really want to keep going, but we can do that on the side. I will talk to you privately. But for now, if there is nothing you want to, if there's something you want to share with our viewers before we leave, myth busting or something you want to tell everybody, we can do that. And then I will take 2 minutes to explain what our project is, and then we can conclude.
Actually, I think I spoke so much. It was all good parts, it was serious parts, it was just neutral parts, and it was all great. Um, Happy Pride Month to everybody who's here. If you are a queer person, if you're not a queer person, just remember that everybody out here, even when Ananya is here, I'm here, we both are here to make sure that these conversations happen on a daily basis and not just because it's the Pride Month. And these conversations are not restricted to LGBTQI people as well. This is for everybody, including you, your child, you yourself as an adult. We all have been deprived of so many things. We have been dictated sexual scripts for such a long time that unlearning it and getting the education we want is going to be so difficult. But I think just having an open and a more respectable approach to it is going to bring such a beautiful change that I think if we can create Kama Sutra, we can definitely change the science of sex and reproductive health in India. And that's not even a that I'm not even questionable about it. I for sure know that we have the potential of changing the face of sexual health and reproductive health. So just stay safe, reach out to any healthcare professionals that are out there. You have Sakshi, you have other Sakshi, you can you can reach out. There are always resources available on our pages to people that you want to connect with. If we do not think that we do not have any resources, I promise that we all are going to find something for you. We can redirect you to the help you need. And we're just going to try our best because that is exactly why we are here for. So just if you're confused, reach out. If not, then just be a more respectable, open person. And I think, yeah, we'll just figure it out.
Thank you so much for that. And yes, I completely agree with her. You can reach out to, there is so much on the internet now. Just reach out to any credible source that you find. People will be very happy to assist you because all of us are just working towards the same goal, and that is to build a progressive, safer country, safer homes for everybody. So if it's okay with all our viewers and you, I just take 2 minutes to introduce the Sakshi NGO as well as the Rakshan project, which we have been building over the last few years. So, Sakshi has been working for over 3 decades now to enable preventive mechanisms in India for the practice of everyday equality. So, we work towards gender equality and responsible sexuality in India. So, with that, we pioneered the Rakshan project, which mainly aims to equip NSS volunteers who are between the age of 18 to 22 years old with the capacity to prevent as well as prohibit and intervene in any instance of sexual offences or violence against children in particular. And also we teach them resolution mechanisms, so in case there is some a traumatic situation or a situation where they have to de-escalate, they will be equipped to do so without get putting themselves or the victim in harm's way. So the Rakshan project inspires me every day, and all of you and all the viewers here, you can be part of the Rakshan project. Come volunteer with us. There is a lot we have for you to do. You can also support us monetarily. There, all the links are available in the bio. We have a preview webinar every Sunday where you will learn the basics of everything that the Rakshan project has to offer to you. You'll learn about equality, consent. There is conversations about safe sexuality, all of that. So please do come join us every Sunday at 3 p.m. So, Sakshi, if there is nothing else, then I'd really like to thank you for coming and joining us today. Smita was out sick, but I'm so glad got to have this conversation with you. And I hope Sakshi and Sakshi can connect again in the future. So, with that,
Absolutely, that would be fun.
With that, I think we come to the end of today's live. And again, Sakshi, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you have a great rest of the evening for whatever's left.
You too. Thank you for having me over.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.